You're listening to A Catholic's Perspective with the Religious Hippie. That's me, the podcast all about being a young Catholic surviving in a secular world. Around here, we pray first, pop off second. Whether you're struggling, thriving, or somewhere in between, this podcast is for you. So grab an iced coffee and let's chat. Hi guys, hi. Welcome back to the pod. Happy 4th of July for those of you who are in America, unless you're a patron, because you guys got early access to this episode, so happy July. In that case, I'm so stoked for today's episode because I think it's going to be really helpful to those who where I was a few years ago. So I'm really excited to dive into today's topic. But last week we discussed spiritual warfare and mental health, and that does tie into what we're talking about today. So just be sure to give that a listen whenever you get the chance, maybe after this episode, before this episode, doesn't really matter. But before we get into it, guys, so much has happened and I need to share. So firstly, the Senate officially voted to defund Planned Parenthood for 1 whole year. Okay, this is huge, but we also need to keep fighting because we need to continue pushing and advocating until abortion is completely unthinkable, and we need to keep fighting until Planned Parenthood is completely defunded. So keep advocating, keep speaking up. We are making huge strides, and I'm so proud of all the pro-lifers out there who raise their voice for this cause and have the courage to stand up for the unborn and their mothers. So amazing, guys. Thank you so much. Secondly, okay, life update. Things have been really crazy. I feel like we have not been able to catch a break for the last 3 months, maybe. It's been a while. It's been a while since we've been able to just chill, but I've been traveling a ton, and that is a huge blessing. You know, I'm not complaining at all about traveling. I love traveling, and I am so grateful for all the opportunities that I have to travel. But back-to-back trips are hard, especially for introverts like myself. I love the trips themselves, but I hate the airports. The airports suck, guys. And I don't know why it is all of a sudden that I'm realizing that, but just like spending all day at an airport, layovers, delayed flights, canceled flights, having to Uber, it's just, I don't know. It's a pain. It's a pain. And you know what? One of the reasons I probably just started realizing that airports suck is because Max has not been going with me for some of these trips because he is working. So I just realized that, you know, he hasn't been with me, and usually he does a lot of that stuff. So,
Acura dares to drive beyond standard. A torque vectoring super handling all-wheel drive system, standard in the Acura RDX. Panoramic moonroof and premium 3-row seating, standard in the Acura MDX. Sound that surrounds you, an 18-speaker Bang & Olufsen premium sound system comes standard in the all-electric ZDX, the Acura RDX, ZDX, and MDX, where precision meets craftsmanship. Visit Acura.com to learn more.
You know what? It's fine. I'm just a girl. I'm just a girl, guys. But I just got back from California a couple weeks ago. Actually, a week ago. Time does not. Okay. Anyways, I was there for the first ever women's summit with live action. It was amazing, you guys. It was so wonderful to be around 1,000. Yes, over 1,000 women, and to hear the amazing speakers and just really feel like, you know, I was a part of a female community. I don't have the best track record with female friends, and I try so hard, you know, I really do, but the cattiness and the drama, I can't do it. I really can't do the gossip, you know? It's just too much. And I know that sounds pick-me. I promise I'm not a pick-me. It's just genuinely too much. I don't really even have that many guy friends either. My husband is my main person. Obviously, he doesn't replace my girlfriends or anything. But when I do find good women friends, I'm like, yes, finally someone who understands my morals, my faith, being pro-life, and, you know, even if there is some drama or whatever, it's not nearly to the amount that it would be. And so that's just really, I love being able to find good Catholic women, and there were tons at this event. So that was really amazing. And I met so many, amazing women. So I was just really blessed to be a part of something like that. Also, the weather in Cali is just, guys, it's so nice. I understand why people pay $4,000 in rent to live there, but I also don't, because that's really stupid and expensive. But I also did some content with Adrian. He's best known as Sips with Sarah on YouTube and Instagram. So we finally got to collab. Mr. Lampanto, he was filming. So I'm very excited for that to come out soon. So stay tuned for that. Some of my patrons are going to get stuff that you guys aren't going to get if you're not a patron. So if you do want to become a patron, definitely go check that out. There's different tiers and everything like that. And yeah, we just got back yesterday from visiting my parents and some friends back in Chicago. It was so nice. It was just really nice to go back and just to see everybody. Please continue keeping my father in your prayers. I don't actually know if I ever talked about it on the podcast, but my dad was diagnosed with a glioblastoma. For those who don't know what that is, it's an aggressive brain cancer, and it's been really, really rough for everyone. So please pray for all of us. But we got to see my parents, and then we got to see my best friend Chloe. And then the next day we saw our other content creator friends, Cameron Riker. You guys should definitely go check him out, and his wife Jessica. Give him a follow and everything. He's great. They're so fun to be around, and we all just like hung out, and it was just a lot of fun because usually we don't have time, or it's hard to get schedules lined up just right where you can all hang out. So it was just really, really great. And then the day after that, we did D-Day, which is basically this demonstration to defund Planned Parenthood, and that was awesome. It took place all over the United States. There were so many amazing people out there advocating and demonstrating. I got some good content and everything like that, so I am very excited to share that with you guys when I get that put together at some point. Hopefully today, while I'm recording this podcast. Today's like a content day, so once I film the YouTube video and everything, hopefully I will get that out as well for you guys. But yeah, it was just really, really great. And we got to meet a bunch of great people. Shout out to Noah and Maya. They were awesome, and we got to interview them, and it was a lot of fun. And then, yeah, after that, we had dinner and we hung out with my godmother and her husband, and we just got to enjoy, we got to pick raspberries and eat ice cream and just talk and catch up. And it was just really, really, really great. So we just got back, and I'm glad to be back, but it was honestly so nice just being able to see everybody. But we didn't get to see everybody we wanted to see, and some people I just didn't even tell we were coming into Chicago because, when people hear you're coming in, but then you just don't have time to see them, it's a bummer, it really is a bummer. But we definitely want to take another trip out at some point and see the friends we didn't get to see. But it's also a lot to drive to and from, 4.5 hours. So we're trying to plan everything. But yeah, so we're finally back, and now it's back to hustling and normal life, which is good. And that's the update. Oh, also guys, I got the cutest balcony bird bath. Okay, they are so cute. There's little frogs on it, and it's adorable. So yeah, I'm so happy about that. And wow, I was a little too excited about that, but it's so cute, okay? And now, with all of that being said, let's just hop into today's topic. And that topic is how to abolish your porn addiction. I first kind of want to share my own background with this, since I feel like that's relevant. I don't know, but really quick, I want to tell you guys about my Patreon. If you guys would like to support this ministry and what I do, please consider becoming a patron. You'll get full-length, ad-free, censor-free content along with other perks like early access, behind the scenes, and more. I've linked it in the show notes, so please go check it out. And if you guys want to make a one-time donation instead, you can do so on my website at thereligioushippie.com. Otherwise, please rate, share, and follow this podcast because that really helps us with the algorithm. You guys are so amazing, and you're the reason I continue doing this work. So thank you so much. Okay, some of you guys might already be familiar with my story, but for those of you who aren't, here we go, okay? Just get a drink, sit back, relax. Maybe a small drink though, because it's not actually going to be that long of a story.
On WhatsApp, no one can see or hear your personal messages. Whether it's a voice call, message, or sending a password. To WhatsApp, it's all just this. So whether you're sharing the streaming password in the family chat or trading those late-night voice messages that could basically become a podcast, your personal messages stay between you, your friends, and your family. No one else. Not even us. WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone.
I was introduced to pornography at a very young age, okay, around 11 or 12, by a boy who was a little bit older than me, and he was actually groomed by a girl in his school. He confided that in me, and that is just really sad to look back on and know about as an adult. Also, I have babysat 11-year-olds, and when I look at them, I'm like, you guys are literal kids. Like, you guys are so little, and to know that I was that age when I was going through all of this, it just breaks my heart. So I genuinely thought that this boy liked me, and over time he started grooming me. He introduced me to sexting, he introduced me to pornography, he introduced me to sharing photos. Even though it wasn't like nudes, it was still borderline, it was still teasing. It was weird, and it felt wrong. I genuinely felt weird about it. I felt shame about it. I knew I needed to hide it, but I also really liked him, and I also really wanted validation, and I wanted to feel like I was making him happy. People pleaser problems. And so I just kind of went along with it, and that started an 8-year-long addiction for me. And it's so crazy to look back on that and see where I started and where I am now, and just so crazy. But honestly, when I was going through that, it only got worse when my parents got me my first iPhone. Actually, not an iPhone. We were poor. Samsung. And I was 14 when I got my first phone. No restrictions, no app blockers. I had complete free range of the internet and no self-control or no way of stopping myself. So I got into some pretty crazy stuff, some pretty dark stuff. And this boy and I dated, air quotes, if you can even call it that, on and off until I was about 15 or 16. And in that time, I actually met another boy who I really, really liked. We hit it off right away. I was really attracted to him. He was really sweet, but sadly, he had a lot of the same issues as my ex. So eventually, when I did break things off with my ex and I started being interested in this other guy, sexting and sharing photos and videos and things of that nature became a regular part of our relationship. Almost every relationship I had was based on how I looked, sexting, lust, just all, it was, you guys, it was so bad. And I didn't see it because at this time, I was watching TV shows like The Vampire Diaries, Pretty Little Liars, things that, even Victorious, places that told me it mattered what you looked like, what you wore, you had to be sexy, you had to look this way. And I was 11, well, at this point 15. But the entire world and most of my friends who were pretty secular, and even my homeschool friends, were like, yeah, this is just normal, like this is what you need to do in order to have a relationship, and that's just totally normal. It was not normal, okay? And when I did want something deeper, maybe a deeper connection, to talk about important things that mattered to me, or to talk about our relationship, or just to feel like I had something more than just lust holding us together, I was shut down. We didn't know how to have hard conversations. But over time, we would just fall back into the old habits, even if I did set boundaries or I tried to quit myself, because I'll be honest, I really, really hated being addicted to pornography. I hated it. I hated it the entire time. There was not one time that I was like, oh, this is really great. I really like this. I felt sucked into it and I felt trapped. I felt stuck. And every time I tried to quit, every time I tried to set a boundary, I was always drugged back into it by the person I was dating because they were struggling with it too. And in those 8 years of struggling with this addiction, I also struggled with depression, anxiety, self-harm, eating disorders, major trust issues. I usually don't talk about the trust issues, but major trust issues. And all these things ate me alive as a teenager. I struggled so much from it. I seriously thought about ending it all. I had a lot of, I wouldn't say attempts necessarily, but I was very close, and there was a lot of stuff that I did that was detrimental, greatly detrimental. And then when I did hit rock bottom, I did go back to Mass. That was kind of like my last resort. That's my whole reversion story that you guys are familiar with. But I went back to Mass and I ended up reverting back to the Catholic Church. And after that, my life was drastically changed for the better. But it was hard. I had to basically uproot everything I've known for almost a decade and really rewire my brain and work on myself and work on the virtues that I had been lacking for so long. And it was really hard. It was almost like working out a muscle you've never worked in your life. But, it took a long time. And eventually I was able to beat my addiction. And I will share with you guys how I did that so that you guys can also do it. But I was hellbent on saving my boyfriend at the time, okay? He was struggling with the same addiction, and I wanted to give him the freedom that I had found, but he didn't want it. And I cannot tell you guys how painful that is to love somebody so much, want something that's good for them, want what's best for them, and they don't want it for themselves. It's so heartbreaking. And I was setting boundaries. I tried evangelizing. I tried so hard to get him to change his ways. But you can't force someone to change who doesn't want to. And he didn't want to, even if he said he did. And that's the messed up part, actually, is the fact that he would constantly lead me on telling me he was taking his faith more seriously, or he was interested in the Catholic Church, or that he had been porn-free for X amount of time. But it was all a lie just to keep me around. And when I found out, I felt so betrayed, so manipulated, and I broke it off permanently, because even though he never actually defined the relationship, when I would call him my boyfriend, he would be like, no, don't call me that. But if I didn't, then he'd get upset at me. And we had been on and off dating for so many years at this point that there was just so much resentment built up, and it just wasn't going to work. It just was not going to work. So when I broke it off permanently, I had to make it clear that whatever this had been for this many years was over permanently. Never hear from me again, never talk to me again, because I needed to set that boundary for him, because he was not strong enough to do that. He was not a leader. He was not able to do that. And for the betterment of both of our souls, for each other, and for my betterment at the end of the day, because I'm dating to marry. I want to get married one day, and he was dragging his feet, and thank God he did, to be honest, because I don't know what life would have been like had I been married to him, and I don't really want to think about that, to be honest. But after I ended things, I started really working on myself for a bit, and I did some spiritual direction, and while I was doing that, I was also friends with this guy, and now that I was single, I started seriously looking at him as a potential spouse. I mean, as a man, like, I found him attractive. He was very Catholic. He was humble, sweet, funny. He never pressured me, and always cared about me, always looked out for me, just as a friend. And that man was Max. So shortly after, my eyes were just opened to the fact that the man of my dreams was standing in front of me this entire time. We started dating, and then 6 months later, we got engaged, because when you know, you know. So I love talking about my husband. He's so, I love it. But
This episode is brought to you by Avid Reader Press. Legendary investor Ray Dalio's new book, How Countries Go Broke: The Big Cycle, explains the mechanics behind big debt crises. Larry Summers says Dalio's brilliant iconoclastic approach is an invaluable resource, and Hank Paulson says it provides a solution to what is the biggest and most certain threat to our prosperity. Read it to understand the greatest economic issue of our time. Available now wherever books are sold.
during all those years of just sexting and being objectified, or even after I quit, once I reverted, I carried a lot of weight and misconceptions about myself. But thank God for Max, because through him, I was able to heal. He didn't objectify me. He always respected me. He constantly complimented how smart I was, and he always told me the things that he loved about me, about how caring I was, going above and beyond for others, my sense of humor, my eyes, etc. And for once, I finally felt like I was loved and not lusted after. So Max was, and continues actually, to be a huge part in my healing journey, and I cannot express the amount of love I have for him and how much help he has actually been. You know, I've been going through the motions for years now, and I have made so many more strides in this by his help, and that's just crazy. Anyways, 10 out of 10. I hope this type of love finds you someday if it hasn't, because it's truly a godsend. I don't know what I'd do without him, truly. But okay, so that's just a little background on me. But how did I quit? How did I actually go through the process of working through breaking the chains of this addiction? Because it's not easy, honestly. But if you are dedicated, you will succeed. The first thing I want to say is you're not a failure, because I feel like when you're in this mindset, there's a lot of shame, a lot of guilt, there's anger involved even, where you feel like it's all your fault and you can't break free, and all those are lies from the devil. Okay, you are not a failure. you are listening to this podcast because you want help, I assume, at least. And that is the first step in healing, is realizing there is a problem and you want help. So I want to say I am so proud of you for wanting to change and wanting to get help. It's very brave, and you should be proud of yourself for getting the courage to find help. I was introduced to this addiction. I didn't go looking for it. I didn't know what anything was. I was sucked into it through no fault of my own. And maybe you're like me in that way, or maybe you discovered it on your own. But either way, you are not a bad person. You are a sinner, but we all are sinners. And it is so important to get help for this. But you are not beyond saving. You are not worthless. You are not dirty. Just let the mercy of Jesus in confession wash you clean. That is where you need to begin with this healing journey. Do a good examination of conscience and start going to confession if you haven't. Confession is where we return to God in the way the prodigal son returned to his father. If you guys have not read that story or you don't know that story, please go check it out. But God is always waiting for us with his arms outstretched, just waiting for you to return. So go to him. I'm linking a really good examination of conscience below so you guys can properly prepare for confession. But yeah, that's going to be your first stop, is confession. So start there. The next thing I need you to do is to keep track of your triggers. What causes you to spiral into this addiction? Is it keeping your phone in your room at night? Maybe it's a movie, a TV show, music. What happens right before you fall into this sin? Is it being stressed, drinking, hanging out with someone specific? Maybe it's something you see on social media. Either way, you need to figure out what your specific triggers are and see if there is a way to avoid them, or at least be more prepared when they do pop up so it won't take you by surprise. And then you fall back into this sin. You also, this kind of ties in with that. You also need to understand your motivation behind quitting. In other words, why are you quitting? Is it for the sake of your relationship? Is it for your mental health? Is it because it's a mortal sin and you want to stop offending God? Well, it isn't always a mortal sin if it's like a compulsive thing and you actually cannot control it, but you want to quit. That's rare though, and it's different, but it is still a sin and you probably do want to stop offending God. So what is your reasoning for wanting to quit? I want to tell you guys about this study that was done on college students in the 1980s over the course of about 6 weeks. These were completely randomized studies dealing with the objective exposure to pornographic material. So keep in mind that this study was done before the age of internet porn, so these subjects had even less exposure to it than we do now. And what they discovered is that they found that male subjects became more indifferent towards women. They were more hostile towards women. All the subjects, men and women, viewed rape as a less serious crime. Like, that is absolutely insane. And then there's a couple other things that they discovered. Like, when people started watching more pornographic material, they also wanted more extreme and deviant content. They were more accepting of cheating in a relationship. And this one always kind of interested me. The men experienced less of a desire for children, and the women experienced less of a desire for daughters specifically. Like, what? That is just so crazy to me. And this study shows you just how bad this addiction can be for you, your relationships, your mindset, your soul. But you need to find your why so that when you are faced with the temptation, you know why you're trying to stay clean. My reason was because I wanted to fix my mental health, my relationship, my own self-worth, and of course to stop offending God. That's probably the biggest one. Our Lady of Fatima told us that more people go to hell for sins of the flesh than any other sin. And she also said that there aren't enough people to pray for poor sinners. And that hit me really hard. And that was before World War II. That was before the internet was even a thing. So just realizing the gravity of this sin and how it isn't just impacting me and my soul, but also my loved ones, that was enough for me. So over time, that motivation was very, very helpful for me to keep going. Even when I messed up or I slipped up or when things were hard, I knew what the Catholic Church teaches. And it teaches that sexual activity is a gift from God. And when it's used for its intended purpose to be exercised within the sacrament of marriage, then it's a very good thing. And I didn't want to hate sex. I didn't want to be afraid of sex. It's a gift and it's beautiful. But I also had such a warped understanding of it that it warped my understanding of the human body. I don't know if that makes sense. So learning more about theology of the body, written by Saint JP2, was also very helpful for me. Highly suggest you guys read that, or at least the introductory book, which is like Introduction to Theology of the Body. That one's also very good. But yeah, you have to figure out what your why is. And then from there, get an accountability partner. Ideally, this is not the person of the same sex as you and not a family member. People ask, why not a family member? Why not? Truth be told, it's a conflict of interest, okay? Your accountability partner needs to be further removed from your day-to-day life. Many people do not have family members who are capable of helping them through this. And it's kind of unfair to put that weight on them because, I mean, let's be honest, we love our family, but we're also a little too comfortable around them, and we might try to fight back if they tell us to do something. It's not good. It's not great. So ideally, it would be a priest, but if you have a really strong Catholic friend who's really devout, they're a great pick too. You need someone who you can discuss this issue with, and they will check in on you, support you, and pray with you as you beat this addiction. They'll also be the ones to set the passwords on your web blockers and app restrictors, which is my next tip, web blockers. Web blockers are going to be your best friend, but you cannot set the password. In a moment of weakness, it's just so easy to tap in that password and spiral all over again. And there are some really great apps out there like Covenant Eyes. They specialize in this type of program. I'm linking all of these resources below, by the way, so if you're looking for them, they're in the show notes. But also, I just recently did a podcast with Covenant Eyes, and I'm linking that below too in case that's something else you want to listen to. But something else that is really important, in my opinion, is to focus on your victories and not your failures. If you slip up, go to confession and begin again. Don't get caught up in self-pity or wallowing. Just dust yourself off and try again. This is just not going to be an overnight change. So be patient with yourself. Don't use that as an excuse, but be patient with yourself. Write down your long-term goals and consistently revisit them. It's going to take time, but over time, you'll see that you are going to get stronger when combating porn, and the grace will build upon virtue as you continue going to confession and receiving communion in a state of grace. And maybe you're asking, but what happens if I do slip up?
When you hear Lululemon, you probably think of Align yoga pants, weightlessly soft, like you're wearing next to nothing. That's why you see them in class, at the grocery store, and in the park. But did you know about skirts with built-in liner shorts so you can still jump for the Frisbee? And tanks and bodysuits? With Align's iconic stretch, you won't want to take it off. And with endless style options, you don't have to. Shop in-store or online at Lululemon.com.
And I know I just said not to focus on the negatives, but I was where you are, so I do know how difficult it can be and how disheartening it is to mess up. I cannot tell you guys the amount of nights I would just cry because I slipped up and I thought that I was over it. I thought I was strong enough, but in reality, I just got a little too cocky. I still needed a lot of time to heal, and I had a long road ahead of me, but that was a hard pill to swallow because I wanted it to be an overnight change. But that's just not how addictions work. So if you slip up, dust yourself off, go to confession, begin again. That is the most important thing. But I also need to ask a hard question. And I feel bad asking it, but it is very, very important. So I need you to consider this if you are consistently slipping up. Are you serious and genuinely wanting to defeat this addiction and to change? Change is not easy. It takes commitment. It takes dedication. We fall, we get back up again. But the reason you need to ask yourself this is because many people feel pressured to quit from other people, society, the church, I don't know, a bunch of different places. But your disposition of heart might not want to actually change. And that is something you need to wrestle with God, because those two guys I talked about earlier that I mentioned, one of them, I begged to quit pornography and he said yes at first, but his yes quickly turned into a no when he realized what life was like without pornography, and he liked the way it made him feel, and he had absolutely no intention of stopping once he realized that he just didn't want to quit. And then the second guy said he quit porn, but his actions proved to me something different. And then sure enough, he did not quit. And the one common denominator here is that they didn't necessarily want to quit. They just felt pressured by me to quit. So just be honest with yourself here. Pray for purity of heart. And I personally found prayer journaling very therapeutic for this whole situation. And it's also a great way to document your journey as you progress. You can kind of see how far you've come and look back and things like that, which has offered me a lot of healing. So maybe it'll help you in that way. But don't give up if you truly want to beat this addiction. Keep fighting, okay? God will give you the graces you need. Just keep asking him for them. Okay, now we're going to pivot into something that is just as important as spiritual health, but that is physical health and looking into healthy habits. When was the last time you guys looked at your diet, your sleep schedule, and your exercise schedule? In this article posted by Fight the New Drug, which I highly, highly suggest you go check them out. I'm linking them in the show notes. They correlate porn addictions with poor sleep, bad diet, and little to no exercise. In your sleep, your brain is recharging and repairing itself, and the whole body really. But when we lack sleep, we lack the ability to think clearly and to reason. So this is why people who struggle with pornography addictions tend to backslide at night, also keeping their phones in their room, just double whammy. But food also plays a huge role in this too, especially when we aren't fueling our bodies enough or with good things. When we're constantly just eating and drinking things that are genetically modified or they hardly resemble food when it enters our stomach, it's just no wonder that our bodies don't run well. Diet is a huge part of mental health, so pay attention to what you are eating and how it's making your body and mind feel. Make sure you're cutting out those sweeteners like high fructose corn syrup. Make sure you're not eating a ton of dyes, especially red 40. All of that stuff is just really, really bad for your body and for your mind. And the other thing, of course, is exercise, right? Sitting is the new cigarette. We've all heard that phrase at least once in our life. I've heard it maybe a few more times. But our bodies were not meant to be sitting for hours and hours in an office or on a couch or in a car. We're meant to run, to move, to get our heart rate up. I cannot tell you the happiness I had when I had my first runner's high. I felt like I could run forever. I noticed also that the more difficult lifting I did or the harder I pushed myself in cardio, the happier I was. Obviously, I was healthy about it, didn't overdo it, and I did allow my body a lot of time to rest and to heal. But yeah, exercise is just so underrated when dealing with a pornography addiction. Not to mention that exercise increases neurogenesis, which is the birth of new brain cells. And I need that because my 2 brain cells have been rubbing together for the last 3 years. So I will take some new brain cells. Thank you. But yeah, just, make sure you're getting enough sleep. Make sure your diet is more good stuff than bad stuff. And make sure that you guys are getting some sort of exercise in, even if it's just a walk. Walking is one of my favorite exercises. I go for a 45-minute walk almost every day, and it really does help me not just process my day, but also get moving and feel better in general. Like it's great. It's great. So that's really important. And then another thing you need to do is immerse yourself in scripture and prayer. Satan loves idle hands and a noisy mind. He likes that the world is so noisy that we can't hear God's voice unless we actually carve out time for God. Satan likes it when you don't have hobbies or when you don't have anything better to do, because he can use that to his advantage. So there's this quote I love from St. Jerome, and he says, "Never take your hands or eyes off your book. Learn the Psalms word for word. Pray without ceasing and be alert. Don't let vain thoughts lay hold upon you. Direct both body and mind to the Lord. Overcome wrath by patience. Love the knowledge of Scripture, and you will no longer love the sins of the flesh." And tying in with that is the number one thing that is going to help you weed out this addiction better than anything else. Well, besides confession and receiving the Eucharist, of course. And that is praying the Holy Rosary. Not only will praying the Rosary help you defeat any temptations or pornography addictions, but it will also help you uproot any and all mortal sins that you struggle with. So dedicate yourself to our Blessed Mother, consecrate yourself to Jesus through her, and just watch her begin to purify your heart and to cleanse your mind. But this isn't a one-sided situation. You still need to put in the effort. You need to pray your rosary intentionally, meditate on the mysteries, and actually spend time with Our Lady. When I meditate on the rosary, I imagine myself as a small child. Our Lady is holding my hand, and she kind of walks me through this garden of the mysteries where there's like realistic type statues of each mystery. I don't know how to explain it. It's like still frames almost. And she explains them to me as she walks me around them, and I'm praying, and it's just so sweet. And I don't know, it's just really calming and healing. But meditation on the rosary will defeat your lust addiction. So if there is one thing I want you to take away from this podcast today, it's that. And if you are in need of a rosary or you are in need of a miraculous medal, Blessed Is She has amazing ones. Yes, even for the men. So men, if you are in need of a manly miraculous medal, Blessed Is She has one for you. And you guys can use my promo Amber10 at checkout, or just click the link in the description. Okay, another thing I want you guys to do is dive into the virtue of chastity and really understand it, because sadly, chastity is often misunderstood as just sexual abstinence, but really it's the successful integration of sexuality within the person, and thus the inner unity of man in his bodily and spiritual being. No, I did not come up with that. That is the Catechism of the Catholic Church 2337. But basically what that means is that one's sexual desires and impulses are made through the use of reason, faith, and love, rather than being allowed to operate in a disordered or uncontrolled manner or emotional manner. And if you are really serious about destroying lust in your life, you'll have to get used to self-denial and self-sacrifice. In other words, if you want to tame the wild stallion of your flesh and bring it under the bridle of self-control, then you need to practice fasting, sacrifice, and self-denial. And as Catholics, we should already be doing this, but unfortunately, not many Catholics do, or they do the bare minimum, an hour fast before receiving the Eucharist on Sunday. They fast for Lent, but they don't really take time out of their week every single day of the year to deny themselves or to practice these things. So definitely do that. But these things, they just serve as a means to mortify our disordered passions and, sensual appetites. And Jesus explicitly stated in, I think you guys can find it in Matthew 17 somewhere, that some devils can only be cast out by prayer and fasting. I don't know, by just saying no to like small things, like minor things, like maybe a donut, that extra cup of coffee, entertainment, your favorite food, whatever, I don't know, you will slowly start to build spiritual strength and willpower. And this will help you resist bigger temptations when they come about. So I don't know. I feel like this is something that we need to do more of, even if you don't specifically struggle with pornography addiction. Maybe it's a different addiction. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's a venial sin even that you're trying to uproot. Denying yourself, sacrificing, and just fasting, all of that is going to be so important. So definitely make sure that you guys are taking advantage of that and really getting your flesh under control that way. I know this might all seem really overwhelming, especially if you've been struggling with this for a while and you feel lost. I get it. I was there too. I know the struggles. I know the discouragement of slipping up and the shame, but take me and so many others as proof that there is healing and there is beating this. I still pray constantly for those who are addicted to pornography. It's a horrible addiction, and not many people even see the problem with it. Kids are exposed to it earlier and earlier, whether it's through school, a friend, even a family member, or just having unlimited online access. It really is a problem. And I hope one day that the boys I mentioned in this episode figure it out and find the healing that they deserve. I wouldn't wish this addiction on anyone. It's truly so awful. But you deserve healing, and you deserve to not have to struggle with this anymore. And I want to have a heart-to-heart here, because I have to say this as someone who is over this and has healed from it and everything. This addiction does stick with you. Sadly, you cannot unsee what you have seen, though I highly suggest you ask God for the grace of forgetfulness. That's where over time you'll forget the images you've seen, and that's been monumental in my healing journey. But through my own experience, there are still temptations and urges and times that it feels hard, even years later. And granted, it isn't as hard at all, like it's not hard at all. And it is much easier now than it was, but it does stick with you to an extent. And it's hard to break free from something so saturated within our culture. But again, if you are trying and you're receiving the sacraments and getting professional help if you need it, you will power through and you will be another success story. And then who knows, you might even be able to go on and share your own story and help others, because everyone's story is really unique in how they were exposed, how it impacted them, how they've healed, and you never know who you might help one day. But remember, it isn't an overnight change. It is hard, but with the right support and the right mindset, you will flourish. And I want you to flourish. God wants you to flourish. I'm also going to state something that might ruffle some feathers or be considered controversial, but it really should not be.
Paradise is back.
It's finally here
In a new location, Costa Rica. There will be adventure, drama, and romance.
All gas, no brakes. That's my vibe.
Ready to find some love.
But it wouldn't be paradise without surprises along the way.
These kids need to learn.
That's right. Your favorite Golden alums are crashing the beach.
We bring in a party, baby.
Bachelor in Paradise premieres Monday at 8/7 Central on ABC and stream on Hulu.
Should not be actively dating while in the midst of this addiction. While you might not have been responsible for being exposed to porn, you are now responsible for healing and not dragging another person into that roller coaster. Watching porn is cheating. And if you're in a relationship, there is so much guilt, shame, and resentment that can form, especially from the person who is being dragged into this. They'll wonder why they aren't good enough. They'll feel inferior and like a failure because they cannot compete with pixels on a screen. They'll probably feel objectified too. And overall, you need to either be far enough along on the healing process or not dating at all until it's completely uprooted. And I'm not saying you need to be perfect. You're going to have habits that die hard, but you cannot still be watching pornography and looking for a spouse. That is not right. If you're on the healing journey, you've made improvements, you're getting help, and you're doing all the things, you do need to be honest with whoever you're dating, but I'd consider that a green light to start dating if you're serious and you are actively uprooting it. I also highly suggest you guys watch the free documentary that I'm linking below. This is so important. It discusses people who have been addicted to pornography and how it affected them, just so you guys know you're not alone, but also that this is something that needs to be rooted out of your life in order for you to flourish. So I really want you guys to watch that documentary and let me know what you think. But overall, I want this podcast to be encouraging and inspiring to you guys. So I want to hear from you, the problems you're having. If you're in need of encouragement or advice, email me at askthereligioushippie, that's askthereligioushippie @gmail.com, and put podcast in the subject line to have your email featured on this podcast. But please state whether or not you'd like to remain anonymous, or you can give me a fake name, whatever works. I just want this podcast to bring us closer together and to handle these struggles together. So thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye. This podcast is produced by Amber Rose and is distributed by Metacortex Publishing. This podcast is copyright by The Religious Hippie. Any previously trademarked or copywritten content is used by permission. Information and opinions in this podcast should not be construed as medical advice. Be sure to visit the official website of The Religious Hippie at thereligioushippie.com or find me on social media for other unique content. Thank you.